Okay, welcome. Welcome to chapter 58, Kapitel Nun Ches. If you thought last week's chapter is written cryptically, at least the way I learned this chapter, it's written very cryptically. So let's go right into it. Chapter Nun Ches 58, Pasuk Aleph, verse number 1. Lam Natseach, the conductor, Al Tashches. Al Tashches, we already translated last week. And we basically, hashchasa is destruction. David HaMelech is asking not to be destroyed. Li David by David, Michtam, a Michtam. And as we've mentioned already many times in the Tehillim class, that when it says Michtam, it's a very special or precious prayer that David HaMelech created. So that is the first pasuk. Ha'umram, pasuk number 2. Ha'umram is like with a question mark afterwards. Is it true? Is it possible? Ha'umram. Elem, that you are mute. Ha'umram elem. Is it possible mute? Tzedek tidaberim, that talks and talk righteousness. Can a mute person, or someone that's acting mute, at least that's what the pasuk is talking about, but we'll get into it more on the second run. Is it possible for them to talk righteousness or justice? Meisharim, in the proper path. Tishbetu bnei adam, to judge people, or to judge people in a proper way, in a fair way. Pasuk 3, af belev, and af, meaning at the same time, or also belev in your heart. Oilais tifalun ba'aretz, you are doing oilais. Oilais is at least over here it's translated more as avlois, which means destruction or sins that you are doing in the aretz, in the land. Chamas yedechem tefaleson, and you justify the chamas, the destruction of your hands. You justify. Pasuk Dalet, Zayru Rishayim mirachem, that these wicked, these Rishayim are Rishayim from birth, from the womb. Ta'u mi beten David Chazav, and from birth they already started talking falsehoods, started saying lies. Hamas lamoi, their venom, kidmus Hamas nachosh, is like the venom of a snake. Kamay fesen cheresh, like a deaf snake, viper, a deaf viper. Yatem aznai, that closes its ear. That closes its ear for what? Pasuk number 6. Shelo yishma, that doesn't listen to l'kel malachshim, to the voice of those whisperers. Chayver chavarim mechukam, the ones that are the most skilled in us, like are the chachma, or the smartness when it comes to these, when it comes to speaking or whispering. It seems that it's talking about whispering to a snake. We'll get into it again on the second round when we come back to it. So what's the prayer? The prayer is Hashem, smash their teeth in their mouth. Malta is kefirim nitzites, shatter their fangs of the young lions. Hashem. Pasuk 8, Yimasu k'maymayim, let them melt like water. Yishalchu lamay, and that they're going to disappear. Yidrech chitav, and his arrows should be aimed k'mayis meilalu, and they should crumble. Pasuk 9, k'mayshablul. Shablul, it seems like it's a snail. It's referring to a snail. Temes yalech, that melts as it goes along. I'm not sure scientifically how that works, but that's what the pasuk is saying. Nefel eshes, a stillborn, or disappear like a stillborn of a woman. Balchazu shamash, that never sees the sun. Again, better explanation on the second round on all of these psukim. Pasuk 10, beterem yavinu sireisechem, before they even understand, or before they understand that these soft shoots, atad, they become hardened, with vigor and wrath, yisorenu, they will be blown away. And pasuk Yud Aleph 11, Yismach Tzadik, the righteous rejoice, ki chazanakum, seeing revenge, or when it sees revenge, pa'amav yirchatz, his feet he will bathe, bedam arasha, in the blood of the wicked. And people will say, there is fruit, or which is translated as reward for the righteous. And indeed there is a God, that judges the earth. Now, if you understood anything in this capital, you deserve a gold star. Um, what's going on over here? What's this kapitel all about? What are we saying over here? What's this? What's going on over here? So first of all, um, the two lines at the top of the kapitel, David expresses the anguish caused him by Avner ben famously, and his other enemies who justified Shaul's pursuit of him. So this is David HaMelech complaining about those who were, how should we say, advisors of Shaul, and they justified halachically and otherwise reasons to go after David, and David comes and complains about that. And that is what this chapter of Tehillim, that's what this kapitel of Tehillim is referring to. So that's what the headline of the Tehillim. Now, really, it's a continuation of last week. And next week also, chapter 59 is also a continuation, also starts with the same Lam Natzech al Tashches LeDavid Michtam. This is also, and then we'll go into other chapters of Tehillim, but these three chapters are all referring to a time when David's life was in grave danger, and when he was in grave danger, he composed these psalms. So here he's complaining about Shaul's advisors. Ultimately, the real complaint that he had against them is that they insisted to tell Shaul that David wanted to kill him. David did not want to kill Shaul. David was promised that he would become king by the prophet, by Shmuel. But one thing he definitely didn't want to do is kill Shaul. But when the advisors realized that I don't know, this is my own commentary, but when the advisors realized that their only way they could stay in business, right, is if there's a war going on, so they push for war to continue, and ultimately this is what David is complaining about. Now, what happened? What was the story? There's two times. We're going to talk about the first time, and then in the second pasuk we'll talk about the second time. There's the first time that David HaMelech encountered Shaul, and tried to prove that he wasn't out to kill him. So the Medrash says, the Medrash tells us the story. It's brought down in Shmuel, but the Medrash brings it down over here for this chapter of Tehillim, and says that there was a famous story where David was hiding in a cave, and comes Shaul, and he needs to relieve himself. So he tells all his men to stand guard around the cave, and he's going to go in to relieve himself. He goes in to relieve himself. David sneaks up behind him and cuts, or not behind him, because he took off his cloak in order to go to the bathroom, right? And it was hanging on the side of the cave. And he goes and he cuts off a piece from his clothing. And then when Shaul goes out and is far enough away that David is safe, so David comes out and says, "See, I had the opportunity to kill you, and I didn't kill you, and here's the proof." And Shaul, sure enough, King Shaul, sure enough, looks at his cloak and he realizes there's a cutout, right? And the pasuk says, the verse says in Shmuel, in Navi, that Shaul says, "Tzadik ata mimeni." He tells him that you are more righteous than me. That Shaul HaMelech, Shaul the king, tells David, "You are more righteous than me." The Medrash continues and says that Avner ben and others that were advising the king at the time didn't like that, and they told him, they said, why you think David didn't kill you because he doesn't want to kill you? He still wants to kill you. Why didn't he kill you in the cave? He didn't kill you in the cave because he knows that if he would have killed you in the cave, we were standing guard. If the king doesn't come out, what's going to happen? We're going in. And if we see that the king was dead, so then we're going to kill David. So he didn't kill you only to save his own life, because he was trapped inside the cave. And that's the way the advisors painted the story. David tried to claim innocence with what he did, and they went and they painted the story very differently. And this is what he's complaining about. This chapter is David lamenting the negative influence of Shaul's inner circle, calling them all different types of evil types of names because because of what they were doing, fighting, or at least advising Shaul against him. So that is in form of introduction. Now some of the kapitel will make a little bit more sense, and some of it still needs a little bit more explanation. but it's not it's a one idea type of thing, and not that much commentary, because what the commentary is more just trying to give you an idea of what the pasuk is trying to say, and the commentaries more or less are all on the same page when it comes to this chapter. So that's, again, we're going to start from the beginning with a little bit more explanation. Pasuk Aleph, verse number 1. David Michtam, and this pasuk, this verse, we already explained at length last week, that David HaMelech is asking Al Tashches, that I shouldn't destroy, or I shouldn't get destroyed, a form of prayer that he shouldn't kill Shaul shouldn't kill him, and it's called a Michtam. A Michtam, as we mentioned many times, the Mitzvah says a few times, but earlier on in different chapters where it said Michtam, that when he says Michtam, it's something that is very close to him, something that he felt very strongly about this chapter. Pasuk number 2, Ha'umnam, is it true, Elam? So what's this idea of Elam? Elam literally translates as mute. Mute. So what is it true that you're mute and you can't speak? That's what he's asking. Is it true that you're mute and you can't speak, and you can't tzedek to the Beiron, and you can't speak justice? You can't bring out the right justice over here in this story? So Rashi continues based on the medrash that we mentioned in the beginning, the introduction that I used, but Rashi over here brings the other part of the story. And again, as I mentioned, it's brought down in the medrash, but it's also brought down, obviously, in the story in Shmuel. That what happened is that there was the story in the cave that we talked about already, and then later on there's another story that's brought down, that there was the encampment of Shaul, and they got really tired. And it says that Shaul fell asleep, and he fell asleep in a deep sleep, a very deep sleep. It says that him and his people, they all fell asleep, but they fell asleep in a very deep sleep. David HaMelech passes by, and he comes, and he wasn't far away, but he takes the water bottle. He takes Shaul's, the king's, water bottle, and then he comes and he tells Avner and the others, not just Avner ben Ner, but the others as well, and he tells them, look, in the previous story, in the time when I was in the cave, you said that I didn't kill because otherwise I get killed. The description over there is that the way Avner said that, well, we would have ripped them apart limb by limb. Says that was your reasoning why you said that I didn't kill Shaul in the cave. But now we're not in the cave anymore. I could have easily killed Shaul and run away. It was out in the open, right? And everybody was in a very deep sleep. The proof is nobody woke up when he showed up, when he came by. And look, what do you have to say to that? So and he had nothing to answer. Avner had nothing to answer, but still didn't do the right thing. So that's the ha'umnam elam. Is it true that you're mute and you tzedek the beiron, and you're not even going to talk righteousness, and you're not going to bring up the right thing, the righteousness, meaning bring up the fact that we that I don't want to kill that I don't want to kill Shaul. So this is the beginning of David's complaint against Shaul's inner circle, Shaul's advisors. Pasuk 3. Now, so it's one thing if you're just dumbstruck and you don't want to say anything and you don't want to judge and you don't want to bring up something positive. But David HaMelech continues and he says, but really in your heart, it's not just that you have nothing to say and you're keeping quiet. Really in your heart, you want destruction. Not only are you quiet, as Rashi brings up here in Pasuk number 3, that not only are you quiet about David, but in your heart, you're even planning against me. And the Yavetz translates the Pasuk, so Af believe in your heart, injustice is oilos, avlois. So if you do an avil, if you do a sin, its source is from your heart, and it's not by happenstance. And he was talking to these advisors of Shaul that sometimes you could say, oh, I made a mistake. You made a mistake. So he says that that your hands are not even trembling. You're not like worried. This is the way you're doing things, and you don't care. And this is again part of David's complaint against the inner circle around Shaul. Pasuk Dalid, pasuk number 4. So very straightforward pasuk. He complains that these people are so wicked, that they're wicked, that they've been wicked since from the womb, and they always and they've always been speaking lies. As Rashi says, that from when they left their mother's womb, they were already foreign towards the ways of Hashem. And Rashi says, and Rashi brings a comparison between this pasuk, also in the wording of this pasuk, brings a comparison between this pasuk and a pasuk that talks about Esav. That Esav also famously the pasuk says that when Rivka was expecting twins, and it says that they were fighting inside, and she went and she couldn't understand what was going on, right? She went to find out. She went to the famous yeshiva of Shem and Aver, and she went to ask them, what's the story? Why is this going on? What's happening? And what she was told was that one of them is going to be a Yaakov, one is going to be righteous, and the other one is going to be Esav, and he's going to be running after all the other things. So similar over here, meaning that there is a concept like this, that someone could be born and be from birth being schlepped in that direction. And that's what Rashi says this pasuk is talking about, that David HaMelech is complaining, lamenting against those, the inner circle of Shaul, complaining that they're evil, but not only evil now, they were evil since they were born. Pasuk number 5, and he compares them over here to a snake, meaning it's an analogy, obviously, right? They're not literally, not physically a snake, but as Rashi says, that they have venom, they want to kill, they have, and they could kill just like a snake could kill. And then the pasuk says, it's interesting because the pasuk ends off about a deaf snake that doesn't listen. We're going to see the next pasuk. So actually, they're connected, really, the two psukim, pasuk number 5 and pasuk 6. First, he compares them to a snake in pasuk 5, then into a deaf snake, and then he says that they don't even want to listen to the whisperers. What's the whisperers? So I just saw an article recently of this, someone that was a snake whisperer, just a modern, like today, last week or 2 weeks ago, I don't know, someone that was dealt with snakes all his life, and he got bitten by a snake and he died. This was like last week or 2 weeks ago. So snake. What?
They used to call them snake charmers. You've seen the snake, the cobra. It's a cobra usually. It's in a basket, and the basket is open, and this guy is playing the flute and waving it, and the snake comes up, and he has the snake like in a trance. Yeah, he plays the flute and waves it around, and the snake is affected. It's put in a trance. So this is the snake charmer. But here he says the snake, these guys, they're deaf. They don't listen to the snake charmer.
Right. Oh, exactly. So
and that's where the question of, in my mind, it casts a question that, so who's the snake charmer? I don't quite understand.
Okay. So let's explain these psukim. So Rashi first he says that they have venom, they could kill like a snake. Okay, that's the first statement that Rashi says. Then Rashi at the next part of pasuk, the next part of pasuk number 5, that says that they're deaf. So obviously they're not deaf, literally deaf. So Rashi gives an analogy of a older snake that loses hearing in one ear, and the snake charmer, it knows that the snake charmer, even before the snake charmer is really at the end of pasuk 6. So when we're in pasuk 5, it's before we're talking about the snake charmer. It's talking about that there's people that it's going to go. Let's say a snake comes to bite a person, right? And the person screams out, "Please, don't bite me!" And the snake ignores that person. So obviously it's an analogy. We're not talking about literally a snake. We're talking about David HaMelech referring to these people that are ignoring the begging of others, or David specifically, of leave me alone already. Stop running after me. Stop trying to bite me. Stop trying to kill me with your venom. And that's the way Rashi explains the end of pasuk number 5, that they're deaf. What does it mean deaf? That it closes one of the ears. Well, it's deaf in one ear, but it puts the other ear to the ground so that way it doesn't hear. That's the way Rashi explains that pasuk. The Mitzuda says, it explains it a little bit more through the analogy that these people, these evil people, the Rishayim that he's referring to in the earlier psukim, they're such evil people that they don't even listen. They can't hear the cries for mercy of the people that they are affecting. The Alshich usually has so he says, well, we're talking about a snake. So if we're talking about a snake, he compares it to the snake that spoke to Chava. What's the snake that spoke to Chava? The snake that spoke to Chava talked lies, was sly, and talked a lie to Chava, and that's what he refers it to. He says the reason why he's bringing up snake is because just like the snake in the story of Adam and Chava was sly and lied, so too these people, these evildoers, these Rishayim are also speaking lies and are sly. Right, so that's pasuk number 5, and going straight into pasuk number 6, that they have such evilness, these people, that even experienced snake whisperers, or as he called it, the charmers, right? Even the charmers, that they don't have, they can't have any effect on these evil people, on these Rishayim, which usually they might have an effect. But in this case, they're not having an effect against these Rishayim, against these evil people. And the Alshich over here on pasuk Vav, on pasuk number 6, says they're like that what's unique about this story is, and the reason why, a second reason he brought up, the reason that he mentioned snakes. Why? Because he compares snakes to the story of Chava, that the snake was sly and lied in order to get his way. Then he continues over here and he says that it's compared to snakes over here because snakes bite for no personal gain. Think about it. I mean, maybe they do it as a protectionism for sure, but in general, a snake, it's not going to, unless it's going to eat the person and going to eat a piece of flesh or going to eat another animal, etc. But a bite with venom, it has no personal gain from. So that's the way the Alshich mentions over here that he's referring to the Rasha, that the Rasha is just trying to do bad to David and it has no personal gain. That's the way the Alshich explains it.
Rabbi Leibel, what do you mean a snake has no personal gain? That's how he subdues his prey. That's how he eats. He bites the prey.
If it's actually going to eat it, if it's just going to bite it, just going to give the venom.
That's how it subdues its prey. It sees a mouse, it gives it a bite. Every bite, it injects venom. It doesn't just bite without inject. That works on the nervous system of the mouse and makes it it can't move.
Right.
Move, then it eats it. It swallows it.
Right.
I hate to.
Yeah. It's an analogy. Again, it's not a story. This is what happens. That he's saying, look, the snake, it bites. It has no personal gain, right? If it bites a human, right? It bites a human. What's going to happen? Hopefully, the human will be able to get treated or the antidote, and will be fine. So it has no personal gain from it. You're right that in the bigger picture, it has this idea, but in the analogy that David HaMelech is trying to bring out over here is the idea that it doesn't have direct personal gain. It's not like a lion will attack someone while he's hungry and needs to eat. So here, the snake, the gain is not the same. But it's not a scientific study. It's an analogy, and therefore an analogy you could give it some leeway. So yeah, that's pasuk 6, pasuk 7. So again, from pasuk number 2 until pasuk number 6, through pasuk number 6, it is David HaMelech lamenting against the Rishayim, against these evil doers, against these people that are starting up with him. And then with Pasuk 7, he starts his prayer. He starts davening to Hashem. What's he davening to Hashem? He's davening to Hashem that they should smash their teeth. What does it mean they should smash their teeth? They should bang, that they should get knocked in the teeth. So we mentioned in last week's chapter, how they destroy, when he refers to the Rishayim, with the evildoers, that they destroy with their sly tongue and with their teeth, with their mouth, with the idea of Lashon Hara, talking negative, etc., etc. So here he's asking that the punishment should be to knock their teeth. That's the way the Alshich explains it. The Alshich, the Radak, sorry, that was the Radak. The Alshich mentions that after he compares them to snakes, he's asking to get rid of their venom. What does it mean? Right? Where is the venom comes from the mouth? So he says, blunt their teeth. What is he referring to? What's the venom of these Rishayim? What's the venom of these evildoers? The venom is the Lashon Hara, the words that they use, and that's why he says to blunt their teeth, and that's why he's asking for that in this form of prayer. Keep in mind this pasuk, because we're going to bring back this pasuk when we get to the end. When we get to the end, I didn't want to bring it up the first time when we read it through, and we'll get there in a moment. But at the end of the chapter, when he talks about a tzaddik being righteous, rejoicing, seeing revenge, etc., keep in mind that all David asked over here is to knock their teeth, which at least according to the Alshich, but according to others also, he's not asking for them to be killed. He's asking for them that the venoms, or what they're using as venom, right? The poison that they're using, which is Lashon Hara, that Hashem should get rid of their Lashon Hara. Pasuk Ches, pasuk number 8. Yimasu k'may mayim.
Sorry. I just ask you why the mullahs of a lion? You were talking first about serpents, of cobras, and now you're talking about lions.
Lions in pasuk 7. In pasuk 7. Yeah, I don't know. It's a good question. I don't know why it continues. There wasn't much on mefarshim on that part of the pasuk in the first place. So I don't know. Yeah, good question. It continues in pasuk 8, pasuk Ches, that they should melt away. They should melt away like water. Yimasu k'may mayim. Let them melt away like water. So Rashi over here comes and says that what does it mean that they should melt away? From their own worry, it should melt them away. From their own worry, they should melt away. And then it continues. Yishal fulame, disappear. What does it mean disappear? So different commentaries explain it as either water that gets spilled over some earth or something like that, and it just gets swallowed up into the earth and disappears, or it's talking about a wave that slaps onto the beach and then pulls back and then also kind of disappears. So different ways that the commentaries explain this pasuk of Yimasuk and Maim, melting like water and disappear. Yidrich Chitzav, that Hashem should point his arrows, and that they should crumble, and they'll disappear. The Alshich says, so the way I explained it now, it's two parts of the pasuk. There's the water, and then there's the aiming of the arrows, and most common, basically the Rishayim talk about them disappearing like water, but then Hashem, David asking Hashem to point arrows or spears in their direction. The Alshich though it explains it as one flow, that if they're worried and their worry creates them to disappear or to melt like water, or to disappear like water, so then the arrows or the spears or whatever they're holding in their hand will also just fall and crumble. And that's the way the Alshich learns pasuk 8. Pasuk number 9. Kemay shablo, like a snail that will disappear when it comes out of its shell, or a stillborn that will never see shemesh, that will never see the sun. So what's it talking about over here? The Metzudah says that it's referring to these Rishayim, that they'll never see the sun. What does it mean they'll never see the sun? They'll never see light of salvation. That's what it's referring to. And the Alshich says that it is referring to a whole nother story. I'm sure you're familiar with the story of creation. When Hashem created the world, there were Shnei Ma'ires Hagdailim. There were two great luminaries in the sky. One was called the sun, and the other one was called the moon. And they both shone brightly, not like the moon today. They both had a bright light. And as the story goes, as the Medrash brings down the story, the moon comes to complain to Hashem that it's not right. There should be only one luminary in the sky, and one should be it should be dark by night and should be light by day, but only one luminary. So maybe you should make the light of the sun not so strong. And Hashem turned around and says, no, you know what, we'll darken your light, not their light, and that you're going to become a reflection of the light of the sun. That's the way the story goes in the Medrash, that they complain that there can't be two suns in the sky, so to speak, right? And the Medrash brings it out as a lesson how we have to be, don't go, on the contrary, try to build yourself up, don't try to put someone else down. When you put someone else down, ultimately you diminish yourself. That's a lesson for another time. In the story of David and Shaul, that was one of Shaul and his people and his advisors' complaints, was that you can't have two, right? What happened? Shmuel comes and says, after Shaul is anointed and he is king, and Shmuel comes and says, yeah, and David will be king. There can't be two. And that's what creates this whole vicious cycle, that there can't be two. There can't be two. There can't be two. So the Alshich says that that's what this pasuk is referring to, about Chazu Shemesh, about the idea of never seeing the sun, that it's alluding to the story of the sun and the moon complaining that there can't be two luminaries in the sky, and now that Shaul and his people are complaining there can't be two people promised to be king, or one anointed as king, the other one promised to be king. David HaMelech is warning, careful, watch out what you say, because look what happened to the moon when the moon complained in that kind of fashion.
Sorry, can I ask you again about, I know nothing about animals. Like a snail which continually melts. Snail melts. I don't understand.
It's an analogy. I have no idea. I have no idea myself. It's an analogy of a disappearance.
It's not a very good analogy. I mean, all this stuff about animals, it's like usual. I always find this, that really the knowledge about animals is very, very basic and faulty in very many cases. I think what he's referring to is that, I don't know if you've noticed, when a snail moves, it leaves a track behind it, like a wet trail. When a snail moves, it leaves this wet, mucusy kind of a trail behind it. And so he's assuming that this is part of the snail itself. As it moves, it's using itself up, by leaving this trail. It's melting. And we know that snails can disappear immediately. They can go right into their shell. They can disappear, right? You see it walking, you see the snail. It's got a foot and two little antennae. And all of a sudden, if it gets scared it goes in its shell. So it's some type of an analogy, like you said, but it's not based on
not a scientific one.
Not scientific at all.
Right.
That's right.
Pasuk Yud. Pasuk 10, B'terem Yavinu Sirusechem, now is talking about the next generation, that even when they're young and strong, even when they're young, before they become strong, they won't survive. It's talking the analogy that's given, and the commentaries bring up the idea of a ben Seder Umayra. It's actually in the Rambam these days. A ben Seder Umayra, a wayward son, that talks about in the Torah. We don't really have a scenario. I think in the Gemara it talks about that there was one in the whole time of the Gemara. There's one child that was considered to be a ben Seder Umayra, but there is a pasuk that talks about this ben Seder Umayra, a child that is totally off the deep end, and he actually gets capital punishment, which is a discussion for another time. But this over here, David is referring to the children that are born of these Rishayim in the form of a ben Seder Umayra, and that's the way Rashi and some others explain it. The Sfarnu says that B'terem before you get to your ripe old age, these Rishayim, before you get to your ripe old age, then you're not going to make it to the ripe old age that you should have lived to. And that's the way this Sforno explains this pasuk. Again, a curse or a prayer form from David towards Hashem. Okay, so that is second part of the chapter. The first part of the chapter, he laments against the Rishayim that are making trouble. The second part of the chapter is he davens to Hashem to take care of these troubles, these people, and these Rishayim, these evil people. And then the end of the chapter ends off like this. So I'm going to read it again and with a basic translation, and then we're going to try to understand it a little bit better. So first of all, Yismach Tzaddik, a Tzaddik will rejoice. Ki chazanakom, when he sees revenge, Pa'amav Yirchatz, his feet he'll bathe, B'dam Rasha, in the blood of the wicked. The Yomer Adam, and people will say, Ach Pri Tzaddik, there's fruit, or which means reward. There's a reward to the tzaddik, and that there is a God, Sheftim Baretz, that judges the land. So on a basic translation, what the psukim here are saying, if you take it on a basic level, which I don't, what the psukim are saying is that the tzaddik will become happy when he sees the Rasha dead. And not only the Rasha dead, that he'll be able to put his feet into the blood that is on the floor from the Rasha, from the evil people, and then also that the people will say, look, the tzaddik gets a reward in his lifetime, and there is yesh din v'yesh dayan, there's a judge and there's judgment, and Hashem ultimately judges evil people. That's a basic translation of the psukim, which doesn't really jive. I have a problem with the way with translating those psukim that way. Obviously, that's not what it's referring to over here. So for the Meiri, I'm going to bring three ways to learn these psukim. First of all, from the Meiri. The Meiri says that it's a hyperbolic expression to convey the extent of punishment. Right? You say that this is what could be for the Rasha, but it's not like a literal description of what's going to be. That's the way the Meiri says. The Panim Yafis was a Rav in Germany about 200 years ago, and he gives an explanation like this. He says, there's a concept that's brought down in Chumash Bereishis. Rashi brings it down in Chumash Bereishis, and I mentioned this in brief in the email that we sent out today about this chapter. That that when a tzaddik merits, if a tzaddik is truly righteous, so then he would the nikama, the revenge or the payback to those who made him trouble, he'll see. If it happens that he doesn't see it, that means he's not truly righteous. So the way the Panim Yafis explains it over here, it says that Yismach Tzaddik, the Tzaddik will be joyful, so to speak, because he'll recognize, if he sees the nakam, if he sees the revenge, he'll realize, he'll see that he was taka, a truly righteous person, because the revenge happened in front of him. So that's the Panim Yafis. But I want to bring you an Al-Shich. And the Al-Shich puts in a commentary into the words in order to understand. Just as a reminder, and this is what the Al-Shich uses to bring this commentary, I mentioned to you to keep in mind that Pasuk 7, Pasuk Zayin, it says, Elikim, Haras Shineimai. He's asking to blunt their teeth, smash their teeth. That's all David HaMelech asked. The rest was things that will happen to them on their own. But what he's asking in the form of prayer, he's asking to smash their teeth, right? So the Al-Shich says like this, and let's start from the beginning of verse 11, from beginning of verse Yud Aleph. So the Ruach HaKodesh, or the divine intuition, tells David HaMelech like this. He says, you didn't ask for them to die. Right? These are Rishaim, they did things, but you didn't ask for them to die. All you asked is that they should smash their teeth, should blunt their teeth. But won't you, Yismach Tzaddik, won't you rejoice more, if you're going to see true revenge, not just smashing their teeth, true revenge, they wanted to kill you, won't you be more joyful, won't you be more happy if you'd see them get true revenge if they get killed? So David HaMelech answers, says, but then it will go to the second pasuk. I'm going to come back to the end of pasuk 11 in a moment, but he goes to the second pasuk and he says, "V'yomer Adam." But if you do that, then people will say, tzaddikim included, people will say that achpri tzaddik, that there's reward for the tzaddik. What does it mean that there is reward for the tzaddik? It will take away my schusim from my Olam Haba. It will take away my merits for the world to come. It will take away my opportunities in the world to come. I don't want it. I don't want that Hashem should take care of my wars here in this world, meaning that they'll get the revenge, and then what's going to happen? I'm going to lose out on my Olam Haba. So no, don't. I don't want them to die. That's the way David HaMelech answers the Ruach HaKodesh. And the Ruach HaKodesh answers him, the divine inspiration, divine intuition answers him. But if they don't die, so you say if they die, it will be a loss from your chosim, for your merits. But what about Hashem's merits? What about the Kiddush Hashem? What about the idea to make sure that people know that Yesh Din v'Yesh Dayin? What about the idea that people should know that Hashem runs the world, and that when you do something right, good things will happen. When you do something wrong, bad things will happen. How are we going to prove that? So therefore, but in order for Hashem for that to be proven, Shaiftim Ba'aretz, there has to be judgment in the land, and therefore it tells us after that. Now, the Alshach continues, and the Alshach says, what is the idea of Pa'am of Yerchatz B'dam Rasha? And gives us a whole different piddush over here. The literal translation is that the tzaddik rejoices when he bathes his feet in the blood of the wicked. The Alshach says no. What's bathing his feet? Bathing his feet is doing tshuva. The tzaddik will rejoice when he bathes his feet. What does it mean to bathe his feet again? Doing tshuva. The tzaddik yismach tzaddik pa'am of yerchatz. The tzaddik will rejoice when he does tshuva. What's going to inspire him to do tshuva? Dama Rasha. When he sees Dama Rasha, when he sees the Rasha getting what he deserves, so to speak, Hashem meting out punishment for the evil and for the wicked, that inspires a person to do tshuva, even at tzaddik. And that's the way the Alshach explains this idea in the last two psukim. So again, it's with the simple pshat, it's very hard to understand, but most of Tehillim is very hard to understand with a basic or simple translation. So that is the way we've learned the end of the psukim, is that ultimately David is asking not, and the divine inspiration, the Ruach HaKodesh, is saying on the contrary, for the Kiddush Hashem, for everybody to recognize that Hashem runs the world, it's important that this should happen. With that, we finish the chapter Nun Ches 58. Any